The people must never fear their government. Governments must fear the people, always. I say the governments of the West absolutely fear their people, which is why they're behaving the way they are now. The Telegraph newspaper in the United Kingdom carried a story this week headlined, Church of England is preparing for UK at war. Quote, the Church of England is preparing for the possibility of the UK going to war, according to the Bishop to the Armed Forces. The Reverend Hugh Nelson said the institution was looking at the Second World War for inspiration on what it might mean for us to be a church in a time of conflict. And the church is considering changing its rules to make it easier to appoint new army chaplains so they can be deployed more quickly in the event of war. Close quote. This is the same church that closed its doors on its congregations during COVID, when the government of this country was effectively at war with its own people. Nothing strikes fear into the hearts of populations quite like the threat of war. One of the government's favourite C words now is conscription, raising the unquiet ghosts of the 20th century when sons were marched away to conflict. The Telegraph piece continues, quote, earlier this week the government's national security strategy said Britain must actively prepare for a wartime scenario in its homeland for the first time in many years. At the NATO summit on Wednesday, the piece continued, Sir Keir Starmer announced that British fighter jets would carry nuclear warheads for the first time since the Cold War. Bishop Nelson said he had heard rising concern about the threat of very, very serious conflict, including conflict that involves the UK, from military personnel over the past 2 years. He said, as a church, we want to take seriously those challenges, both to do everything that we can to pray for and work for and advocate for peace, because the kingdom of God is a kingdom of justice and peace, and to face the reality of how the church might need to respond and to be if there were to be a serious conflict. End quote. A British population, like others around the world, rattled to the foundations by what I describe as the most brutal psyop and campaign of mental warfare ever inflicted on a people, is primed only to fear the next thing, and in that state of fear to look to the authorities to save them. Knowingly or not, the Telegraph article links the recent past together with the present and then the future. Quote, the bishop said the church needed to learn lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic, for which it was not prepared, and should recall the leadership it gave during the Second World War. And then the Telegraph tucked this line into the body of it all. Quote, during the war, the church, led by William Temple as Archbishop of Canterbury from 1942 until his death in 1944, was key in seeking support for asylum seekers fleeing the continent. Do you see what they did there? That might as well have read, and if you've any doubts at all about the rightness of letting uncounted thousands of people into the country in small boats, then you jolly well better get ready for those fleeing the war we're telling you to ready your sons and daughters to fight in. Millions are always displaced by war. The millions on the move now are displaced by the regime change wars waged by the United States since the end of the Cold War. I say again, no population should ever fear its government. Every government should always fear the people. Our sons and daughters belong to us, to our families. They are absolutely not the property of the state to be sacrificed in pursuit of politics.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner.
MPs have the audacity to get behind calls to send our sons and daughters to war, while some of their number won't even pay for their own birthday parties, claiming such on their expenses, which we pay too. The sort of people disinclined to stump up for their own party poppers would have us send our sons and daughters to the charnel house of Ukraine. It's the same mindset that calls for net zero while flying the world on private jets. We must never fear these people, I say. By word and deed, they reveal that they plainly fear us. Look at this story from Germany. The German state just raided 170 people for their social media posts. According to online publication Reclaim the Net, quote, Europe's digital watchdogs now raid homes over tweets. A wave of coordinated police raids swept through Germany at dawn yesterday, not to apprehend violent offenders or disrupt terror plots, but to pursue individuals who dared to post politically incorrect remarks online. The sweeping operation, led by the Federal Criminal Police Office, BKA, targeted roughly 170 homes across the country. Phones, tablets and computers were seized from suspects whose alleged offence was nothing more than expressing strong or offensive opinions, many aimed at politicians. This annual crackdown, now a routine part of the German state's law enforcement calendar, stems from paragraph 188 of the Criminal Code, updated in 2021, to criminalise insults against political figures. In what sane world is it criminal to insult political figures, I ask? If we don't insult those hypocrites, who will? Continuing the piece, under this revision, a disparaging comment about a public official can carry a prison sentence of up to 3 years. Germany's internal surveillance of digital speech has only intensified. The BKA logged 10,732 online hate speech offences last year, an eye-watering 34% spike from the year before and 4 times higher than in 2021. While the law is officially neutral, enforcement skews heavily against right-leaning users. Citizens are not only subject to scrutiny, but encouraged to join it. I bet they are. What authorities define as hateful often encompasses crude jokes, memes or insults. North Rhine-Westphalia's Interior Minister Herbert Rühl made no secret of the government's philosophy. Digital arsonists must not be able to hide behind their cell phones or computers. Anyone who thinks anything is allowed on social media is seriously mistaken. He added that people have forgotten the difference between hate and opinion. End quote. I say what we see here, now in Germany but increasingly everywhere, is the self-proclaimed powerful insisting on being revered like priests of old. What we are seeing, in my opinion, is the equivalent of laws against blasphemy, the implication being that to insult a member of the new priesthood, i.e. a politician, is akin to taking the name of the Lord in vain. The law's reach is growing. In one case, Stefan Nyhoff, covered extensively by Reclaim the Net, was hauled before the courts for calling the economy minister a professional idiot. End quote. I say those in power are determined to stay in power by nothing less than deifying themselves, insisting we see them not as elected servants, which is what they are, but as high and mighty. The Reclaim the Net article continues. Similar forms of speech policing are now entrenched in the United Kingdom. Over the past year, a series of disturbing incidents have exposed just how far British authorities are willing to go to police thought. Julian Fuchs, a retired police officer, was subjected to a house search by officers who inspected intimate family possessions and his bookshelf, which included titles like The War on the West by Douglas Murray. He was arrested and interrogated for 8 hours after posting concerns online about anti-Semitism. Bodycam footage revealed officers tutting over his, quote, very Brexity reading material. Though Kent Police later issued an apology and £20,000 in compensation, the raid itself was not an isolated event, end quote. And how could I forget the Lucy Connolly case? As that news piece relates, Lucy Connolly's story is even more severe. Following a gruesome multiple child murder last summer, Connolly tweeted emotionally charged remarks about asylum seekers. Though the post was quickly deleted, the state decided the offence warranted prison time. She was sentenced to 2 years and 7 months. End quote. Connolly received a harsher sentence than many handed down around the same time and since for the rape of children. Let that sink in. Again, I say all of this, the warmongering, raising the spectre of conscription, using legislation to make people too frightened even to air their opinions, all of this is the behaviour of frightened government, so frightened indeed that all it can think to do is try and make us more frightened of them than they evidently are of us. Happily for us, and unhappily for them, more and more of us see the game every day